Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Joining us in the studio is the former Education Secretary, Michael Gove. Hello, thank you for being with us. Now,
good morning.
Before we start, I'm keen to get your thoughts as someone who's still very well connected with lots of people in the Cabinet. Jeremy Hunt, the Health Secretary, hasn't tweeted for 5 days. He hasn't been seen in front of a camera since those NHS cyber attacks. Do you think he's okay?
Yes, absolutely. Jeremy was actually in Cobra yesterday, helping to coordinate the response to those cyber attacks. As Health Secretary, he has that managerial responsibility. And last week, I saw Jeremy on the Robert Peston programme. We appeared together, and he was unveiling a very exciting and important mental health initiative. Jeremy's been and will be an absolutely superb Health Secretary, and I think that he's a real asset to this country and to the government.
So why hasn't he been anywhere since this huge, very worrying cyber attack?
Because he's a hands-on Health Secretary, and it will be his responsibility, one he's discharging very well, to deal with the situation that arose. But because it's a crime, it was also appropriate that Amber Rudd explained what the steps are, as Home Secretary responsible for dealing with crime, in order to try to make sure that the people responsible for this attack are actually tracked down and dealt with.
Fair enough. Hands-off Health Secretary, perhaps
hands-on.
Hands-off slightly when it comes to the media, hands-on when it comes to dealing with the cyber attacks then.
Putting management of the health service first is the single most important thing that any Health Secretary would do. I know from my time in government that sometimes there would be a request from the media that you might want to accept in order to appear, but your first priority was to get things right in your own department, to talk to those people who were responsible for delivering services, and to make sure that patients, or in my case, parents and pupils, came first.
Now, the big policy announcement from the Conservative Party today is this pledge to build more council homes. Is this another example of Theresa May stealing from the Ed Miliband playbook?
No, I don't think so. We had Alex Salmond on earlier, speaking from his increasingly marginal seat in Scotland, talking about what he termed a hard right Tory government. The truth, as your question implies, is very different. Theresa May and her team occupy the mainstream middle ground of British politics, and one of the difficulties that we've had in the past is that Labour in power didn't build the number of homes, including the number of homes for rent, that we needed, and Theresa is intervening in order to ensure that ordinary working people have the chance not only to have a home to rent, but in due course a home to buy as well.
Now, you say that Theresa May's government is all about the kind of middle ground. Some people would dispute that when it comes to Brexit, which of course is, one of the big issues of this election. Theresa May promising to take the UK out of the EU, out of the single market. You must be delighted as someone who was in that Vote Leave campaign, because she seems to have swallowed your playbook.
Well, I am very pleased that Theresa May is taking Britain out of the European Union, and I think whether people voted to leave or to remain, and of course I respect the strong and idealistic sentiments that motivated many people to remain. The question in this election is, who do you want across that table from Jean-Claude Juncker? Do you want Theresa May providing strong and stable leadership, or do you want Jeremy Corbyn? We've already seen Jeremy Corbyn during the course of his general election campaign trot out a series of nonsensical policies. He would be a disaster as Britain's representative in those talks. So whatever you want from Brexit, and I personally do want us outside the single market and outside the customs union, whatever you want, Theresa May is the person best equipped to deliver it.
Because I wonder if you ever have a moment of doubt or concern about that, because the war of words between Number 10 and Brussels does seem to be intensifying. Theresa May effectively accusing Brussels of meddling in the election. And this is what the Foreign Secretary, Boris Johnson, said yesterday. They're going to play dirty. They're going to try and bleed this country white with their bill. Do you agree with Boris Johnson that the EU are going to try and bleed this country white?
I think it is the case that the EU will have put quite a big price tag on our departure. That's part of negotiation. And if you want the best outcome for Britain, then you need to have a tough negotiator. Theresa has been described in the past, indeed on Sky News by Ken Clarke, as a bloody difficult woman, and Theresa has actually turned that phrase round and said, what you need is someone who will be difficult and determined on Britain's behalf in those negotiations, and that's why I think at this election we can't afford to take the risk of having anyone else other than Theresa May as our Prime Minister.
But do you accept we will have to pay some money? Because Boris Johnson seemed to reply that it's the EU who should be paying us to leave.
There's absolutely no need for us, in law, to pay money as we leave. Now, the final details of this negotiation will be up for the Prime Minister and for the Cabinet to agree. But in law, the House of Lords have spelt out in an authoritative report that there is no need for us to pay a penny when we leave. And whatever happens, once we've left, it will be clear that we will be able to take back control of the money that we currently give to the European Union, hundreds of millions of pounds a week.
Now, we've been talking a bit about Boris Johnson there. I think it's fair to say a few eyebrows were raised in Europe when he was made Foreign Secretary. Last year, you famously described Boris Johnson saying he cannot provide the leadership for the task ahead. Are you comfortable with him playing a role in the negotiations?
Yes, I am. Last year, of course, during the tumult of the leadership election, I put myself forward, and
we remember it very well.
And therefore, by implication, I was saying that I thought that I was better equipped than Theresa May. I've now had a chance over the course of the last 11 months or so to look at how Boris and Theresa have performed in their respective roles. I think Theresa has got every major decision right as Prime Minister, and I think Boris has been an asset to the country and to the government as Foreign Secretary. I think on facing down Russia over its behaviour in Syria, in making sure that we forge strong relationships with the new American administration, and also in ensuring that international development money and Britain's soft power is playing a part in helping to reconstruct Africa and those nations which have been broken by external events. He has shown a strong leadership role, and it's also the case that having someone who was a hugely popular champion of the Vote Leave movement there at the heart of government, well, I think that's something that is all to the good.
David Cameron, someone else who we've seen out and about on the campaign trail this week. Let's have a look what he said about, not very coded message this perhaps for Theresa May. It's so important that the Conservatives win and win well, so Theresa can stand up to people who want an extreme Brexit. And he said both here and elsewhere. So when he's talking about people like you, isn't he? People who want a hard Brexit out of the single market, key Brexiteers. Does Theresa May need a bigger majority so she can stand up to some of those pesky Brexiteers? I think
she deserves a strong majority so that her hand can be strengthened in dealing with Brussels. But speaking for myself, I don't know whether or not I'm a hard, soft or any other type of Brexiteer. All I believe in is honouring the mandate that the British people voted for. And during the course of that referendum campaign, those of us who were arguing that we should leave said the really important thing is that we take back control of our borders, of our laws, of our money, and of the ability to make our own trade deals. And Theresa May, in the speech that she gave at Lancaster House, brilliant speech earlier this year, said that Britain was going to do just that. So for that reason, I strongly support Theresa in these negotiations and as Prime Minister. And I do agree with David that the stronger her hand, the better the deal that she'll be able to secure for Britain.
When was the last time you spoke to David Cameron?
A while back.
Well, how long is a while back? Months?
Well, one of the things about private conversations is that they're generally always better kept private. So on this occasion, I mean, David's no longer in politics, and therefore I will respect his privacy by not talking about that.
Do you miss him?
I think David was an outstanding Prime Minister, but I also think that Theresa has shown...
It's not quite the question I asked, with respect.
No. But I think the thing is that if one thinks about politics, David did an amazing job as Prime Minister. He ensured that we had a Conservative majority, and
but
it was
as
a privilege to serve
as a friend,
cabinet.
do you miss him?
Well, I think, again, I'll respect the privacy of that relationship, because I think that what people in this election want to focus on, I hope, are those candidates who are putting themselves forward and the ideas that they have. So, of course, I look back with respect, and I feel enormous affection and respect for David Cameron as an individual and as a politician. But a new chapter is opening, and that chapter is one in which we're deciding whether or not we want Theresa May to have a strengthened hand and a stronger majority. And I think, and I agree with David here, that the stronger her majority, the better it will be for this country.
Now, you've been very loud and clear in this interview with your praise for Theresa May. You're clearly a fan of the work she's doing. Do you think she's doing a better job than you would have done if you'd been elected
yes, definitely.
leader? Why is that?
Well, I think that, the proof of the pudding is in the eating. The demonstration of the way in which Theresa has made all the major calls on Brexit successfully, the obvious popularity that she enjoys, the stability and strength that she's brought to that role, all of these reflect incredibly well on her judgment and her leadership abilities. And so all I can do is take a step back and admire the way in which she has, on the economy, on education and on Europe, shown a degree of consistency and clarity as leader. There's something else as well. During my leadership run, brief as it was, one of the things that I tried to articulate was the need for the Conservatives to do more for people on average and below average incomes. And actually, to be fair to Theresa, she was onto this issue before me, and she's delivered on this issue far more energetically, I think, than anyone could have expected any Conservative leader could have done. And the result of that focus on ordinary working families has been popularity in the polls, but also a Conservative Party bringing forward proposals, including on areas like new council housing, that reflect the interests of the overwhelming majority.
Now, you're not the only person in your household unflinching in their support of Theresa May. Your wife wrote a column saying,
yes,
backing up her idea of boys and girls' jobs in the house. Do you carry out any boys' jobs quickly? What's your jobs?
In the house? Yes, I do what I'm told. In our home, much as in the country, I'm very, very happy that a strong woman is in charge.
Very sensible answer there. Michael Gove, thank you very much for coming on the show.
I've been getting away with it.